Thank you, Mr. Postmaster. Some of you may have seen a speech I did a month or two ago. It was about the Federal Reserve, and they're going to raise interest rates because they've been at 0% for the past 7 years. Well, in this speech, the next financial crisis, I'm going to tell you how this zero rate for 7 years just could be the start of the next financial crisis. So I know there's a lot of young people here, so maybe zero rates seem normal. So I'll just give you a historical perspective. Generally, interest rates in the economy are going to be at 4 or 5%. People think if rates are at zero all the time, everyone's opening businesses and borrowing money cheaply, it can cause inflation. Because all these new businesses and people buying stuff, it can throw things out of whack. Also, if stuff is at zero interest, it causes people to be more reckless.
No.
If you guys have to borrow at 5% interest rate, you might think twice before buying that stock or doing something else, because you can get 5% interest in the bank. As far as where we are today, like I said, we've been at 7 years of zero interest rates. But again, with when interest rates have been lowered in the past, if you go back over the past 30, 40 years, whenever the economy slows down, the Federal Reserve, which controls the monetary policy, when the U.S. economy slows down from, say, 3 or 4% to 1% or minus 1%, goes into recession, historically the Federal Reserve would cut the interest rate from, say, 5% gradually to maybe 2 or 3%. And this would spur more economic activity. Then the economy would start growing again at 3 or 4%, and they would raise rates again to get it back to normal. Does that kind of make sense? Right? Pretty basic. But this time, interest rates have been at zero for 7 years. So think about it. For 7 years, this is when I'm talking about the economy, I'm talking about individuals, maybe opening a small business, and also large corporations opening factories. But basically, it kind of works the same way, although they get a better deal. But think about it. For 7 years, people have been opening, say, I'll stick mostly to small businesses because that's what you would be familiar with. For 7 years, we've all been opening pizza restaurants and cafes and this and that because interest rates are low. So we're like, why not? We'll open a business. But the problem, as I had also referred to in my last speech, the problem with this is America is still a capitalist society. And basically, everything, Wall Street and mom and pop shops, everything runs on profitability and productivity too. Keep in mind, things need to be productive. If we're pouring money into unproductive things, it's kind of like pouring money down the drain, and we all pay the consequences. So, as I said in my other speech, you see unemployment has been going down. I think from the financial crisis, it was at 9% or 10%, now it's at 5% because people have been opening a lot of businesses. You can see, like I mentioned, a lot of restaurants, stuff like this. But the thing is, corporate profitability on Wall Street has been going down. And I have a feeling a lot of these businesses that you see are not profitable either. And just anecdotal evidence. I live downtown in River North, and I would say at almost every block now, fitness centers are popular. Every block there's 2 or 3 fitness centers. Does anyone else notice stuff like this? So there's some agreement out there. So the fact is, in my opinion, it seems like a lot of people that may normally put money in the bank, they're jumping into these businesses, yet I can see it just doesn't make sense financially, or can this really be the most productive use of money? So that's where the situation is today. And for some of you that follow international news, Japan actually started this whole same type of process, I believe, over 20 years ago. They've been at zero rates for 20 years, and it really didn't work for them. So think about it. If the whole economy, U.S. 7 years or Japan 20 years, we've all been opening these businesses with, most of the time, with borrowed money. So next week the Fed wants to raise interest rates. But how can the U.S. ever get back on track and raise rates if have all these, say, a lot of unproductive businesses out there. When you raise rates, you're going to raise borrowing costs. Wouldn't this maybe cause a recession? Because as you raise rates, a lot of these businesses, you see some of these fitness centers or what have you, they're going to have higher borrowing costs. Eventually, they're going to maybe have to close, and that might also cause the unemployment rate to rise. So these are some things that possibly could cause the next financial crisis. At the same time, everyone assumes the Federal Reserve, these smart guys, most of them are probably professors, who we all know are, they've gone to college, doctorate degrees, that they know what they're doing, right? We all assume these elected politicians, we assume they're wise people. But the fact is, I'm sure all of us are old enough to remember, although some of you are probably still in college, 2008. Let's think back to 2008. Does anyone remember what it was like, the financial crisis? Do you remember the stock market falling 500 or 700 points every day for months on end? Every day, the president having a press conference, we got to do something. Someone from Congress on TV, we got to bail out AIG. And it was pretty scary. I remember in Toastmasters, we had a lot of people here because no one had a job, right? So it's really...
Tim, that's the problem. People are working.
At the same time, the smart people that saved their money were buying real estate. Now, I live in River North. I remember 5 years ago, I was dating a girl across the street from me in River North. She wanted to sell her condo, and she ended up selling it 4 years ago. I think now it's probably worth 50%. So everything was out of whack back then, yet the Federal Reserve didn't see this situation coming at all. The Fed Board Chairman, Ben Bernanke at the time, right before the crisis happened, he was like, yeah, the economy is smooth sailing, everything is going to be great. And look what happened. Just like today, everyone assumes Janet Yellen, the current Fed president, she'll have a press conference where she'll say, yes, the Fed's funds rate is at 0. We plan on raising it 0.25% in the fourth quarter of 2015. And by 2017 of July, we're going to have it up to 0.75%. And in 2018, we're going to raise it all the way up to 2%. How do they know? The fact is, no one really knows what's going to happen. And in my opinion, it's a possibility that we could be looking at the next financial crisis. At the same time, no one can predict the future, including myself. So in closing, these are just things to think about. And also, one other thing is, things run on cycles. So generally, we have a recession. For those of you that are close to my age, we have a recession every, 5-10 years? Always. It's the history of probably any country, yet we haven't been in a recession since 2008, say 7 years. So how can the Federal Reserve start to raise rates now when the economy already is slowing? It's at 1 or 2%. So these are things that I thought about when I was writing my speech, and generally I'm not always right. I've been buying gold for the past 2 years, and I've lost quite a bit of money. So the fact is, I think, as I was talking with Ken earlier, I was joking, but I think the acceleration of technology does play a part in helping the economy smooth out. Just one other thing, if you can see the price of oil, because now they have new ways of finding oil that can lower the overall cost of the economy. So I think that will help in the long run keep us from a major crisis. Just the fact that technology does make everything more productive, but I think we're in for a long, slow grind, and I will leave it at that.